September 11, 2001, a normal Tuesday morning in New York City. The skies were clear, the air calm, and the city alive. Thousands of people hurried into offices, poured coffee, and started another day in the world's busiest city. But at 8:46 a.m., time stopped. A plane, American Airlines Flight 11, struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center. The impact sent shockwaves through downtown Manhattan and across the nation. Within minutes, confusion turned to fear. By the time a second plane hit the South Tower, the world realized this was no accident. That morning, America changed forever. A morning like any other. Before the chaos, September 11th began like any ordinary day. In New York, commuters packed the subways. In Washington, D.C., the Pentagon bustled with early meetings. And in Boston, Newark, and Dulles airports, 4 passenger planes prepared for routine flights across the country. On board were hundreds of people, businessmen, families, flight attendants, and pilots. None of them knew that among them were 19 men with a plan that would change history. The hijackers boarded quietly, passing through security like any other traveler. No one noticed anything unusual. The plan in motion. Between 7:59 a.m. and 8:42 a.m., 4 planes took off. American Airlines Flight 11, Boston to Los Angeles. United Airlines Flight 175, Boston to Los Angeles. American Airlines Flight 77, Dulles to Los Angeles. United Airlines Flight 93, Newark to San Francisco. Each was loaded with thousands of gallons of jet fuel. Each would become a weapon. At first, air traffic controllers thought they were dealing with radio problems. Then, when Flight 11 stopped responding and turned south toward New York, they knew something was terribly wrong. The first impact, 8:46 a.m. At 8:46 a.m., Flight 11 slammed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center between floors 93 and 99T. The explosion sent a ball of fire shooting out both sides of the building. People on the ground froze. Some thought it was an accident, maybe a small plane gone off course. Smoke poured from the upper floors, turning the sky black. Within minutes, every news network cut to live coverage. Reporters said, "It looks like a terrible accident in Lower Manhattan." They didn't yet know another plane was on the way. The second strike, 9:03 a.m., 17 minutes later, as millions watched live on television, United Airlines Flight 175 struck the South Tower between floors 77 and 85. The explosion was massive. Fire, smoke, and debris erupted across the skyline. In that instant, the world knew America was under attack. Inside the towers, panic spread. Some people tried to escape down dark stairwells filled with smoke. Others called loved ones. Many waited, hoping help was coming. Outside, firefighters and police raced toward the danger while everyone else ran away. Washington, D.C., 9:37 a.m. While New York burned, another plane, American Airlines Flight 77, veered off course and sped toward Washington, D.C. At 9:37 a.m., it crashed into the Pentagon, tearing through one side of the building and setting off massive fires. Inside, workers tried to rescue colleagues trapped in collapsed offices. Smoke filled the air over the Capitol. Now, both New York and Washington were under attack. Let's roll. The heroes of Flight 93. Meanwhile, the fourth plane, United Airlines Flight 93, was headed for another target. Experts believe it was meant for either the White House or the U.S. Capitol, but passengers aboard had already heard about the other hijackings. They decided to fight back. Using phones on the plane, they said their goodbyes to loved ones. Then they stormed the cockpit. At 10:03 a.m., the the plane crashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, killing everyone on board, but saving countless lives on the ground. The words of one passenger, Todd Beamer, became immortal. Let's roll. The collapse. 9:59 a.m., 10:28 a.m. Back in New York, firefighters climbed the towers, carrying nearly 100 pounds of gear each, determined to rescue those trapped. But the fires burned too hot. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed in a roar of smoke and debris. People on the streets ran as the dust clouds swallowed blocks of Manhattan. At 10:28 a.m., the North Tower followed. In just 102 minutes, both towers were gone. Nearly 3,000 people died that morning. It was the single deadliest attack on American soil in modern history. The longest day. By noon, the nation was in shock. All flights across the United States were grounded for the first time in history. The President, George W. Bush, declared, "Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward." That evening, rescue workers continued digging through the rubble of the World Trade Center, now called Ground Zero. People held pictures of missing loved ones, waiting for news that would never come. Churches filled with mourners. The skyline that once defined New York was gone. In the days that followed, investigators began piecing together how 19 hijackers managed to enter the U.S. train as pilots and coordinate such a massive operation. The answers would lead from New York to Afghanistan, from airport security to intelligence agencies, and ultimately change how America and the world would fight terrorism forever. The investigation, how the hijackers got in. When the towers fell, America stood still. But even in those first hours, investigators were already asking one question: how did this happen? Within minutes of the attacks, the FBI began what would become one of the largest criminal investigations in world history. More than 7,000 agents were assigned to trace every lead, every phone call, every passport, and every name linked to the 4 hijacked planes. They called it simply PNT bomb, the Pentagon Twin Towers bombing case. The first breakthrough. The first big clue didn't come from high-tech intelligence. It came from the debris. Amid the wreckage near Ground Zero, investigators found a passport. It belonged to Satam al-Suqami, one of the men aboard American Airlines Flight 11. How it survived the explosion remains one of the strange details of that day, but it gave the FBI a name. Soon after, a rental car left at Logan Airport in Boston revealed more documents: flight manuals, Arabic notes, and receipts for airplane simulator training. The FBI began connecting the dots. The 19. The investigation confirmed there were 19 hijackers. All men, mostly from Saudi Arabia, trained by a terror group known as Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden. They didn't sneak into the country illegally. They entered through normal visas, posing as students, tourists, and business travelers. Between 2000 and 2001, they quietly slipped into the U.S., one by one, living in plain sight. They rented apartments, took flying lessons, and blended into everyday life. Neighbors described them as quiet and polite. No one imagined what they were planning. The flight schools. Several hijackers trained at small aviation schools in Florida and Arizona. At Huffman Aviation in Venice, Florida, 2 men, Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Shehi, practiced takeoffs and mid-air turns. Instructors later recalled that the men were polite, but uninterested in learning how to land planes, something that struck them as odd only after the attacks. When their photos were released by the FBI, the instructors realized the truth. They had taught the leaders of the 9/11 plot how to fly, how the plan was built. According to intelligence findings, the plot began years earlier, in 1996. Osama bin Laden, operating from Afghanistan, approved a plan to strike symbol as of American power. By 1999, key members, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, proposed using commercial planes as weapons. They called it the Plains Operation. The hijackers traveled from Germany, the Middle East, and Asia to the U.S. using real passports and tourist visas. They opened bank accounts, used credit cards, even joined local gyms. They lived quietly, but purposefully, waiting for the right day. Missed warnings. After the attacks, investigators uncovered several warnings that had gone unnoticed. In August 2001, an FBI agent in Arizona sent a memo about suspicious foreign students learning to fly, but not interested in takeoffs or landings. The memo reached Washington, but no action was taken. Just weeks later, another agent in Minnesota arrested a man named Zacharias Moussaoui, who had been taking flight lessons and acting strangely. He was detained, but no one connected him to a larger plot in time. The intelligence system had pieces of the puzzle, but no one saw the full picture. The money trail. One of the biggest mysteries was how the operation was funded. Through banking records, investigators found that the hijackers received about $400,000 to $500,000 from overseas accounts, funneled through middlemen and wire transfers. They used ordinary banks in Florida and New Jersey, small deposits, always under detection limits. Most of the money came from Al-Qaeda's financial network, managed through front charities and shell companies. When the FBI froze those accounts, they discovered connections stretching across 30 countries. It was a global web, built quietly, then unleashed in one morning. The muscle hijackers. The FBI divided the attackers into two groups. The pilot hijackers, trained to fly. The muscle hijackers, trained to control passengers and crew. Most of the muscle hijackers entered the U.S. in early 2001, just months before the attacks. They lived in hotels, attended gyms, and waited for orders. Phone records later showed calls between them and contacts overseas for it. Coded MESA, guess, usually short and vague. Each group was assigned to a specific flight. Each had one job. The day before. On September 10, 2001, several of the hijackers traveled to Boston, Newark, and Washington, D.C. Security cameras caught them checking in at hotels, eating dinner, and praying together. They looked calm, ordinary. Some called home for the last time. Others recorded final messages, saying they were ready for the mission. No one at the time suspected anything unusual. At Boston Logan Airport, Mohammed Atta, the lead hijacker, was seen at 5:45 a.m., checking in for American Airlines Flight 11. He carried only one small bag. A later search of his luggage, which missed the plane, revealed handwritten notes, maps, and instructions in Arabic. The notes said, "Be calm, because this is a mission of great importance." The FBI's timeline. By September 13, 2001, the FBI had identified all 19 hijackers. Within a week, agents traced their travel paths, rental cars, credit card receipts, and apartment leases. They discovered that several hijackers had stayed in motels in Florida and New Jersey, and even used the internet at public libraries. Agents seized computers, cell phones, and flight manuals. In total, the FBI interviewed over 100,000 people in the first 2 months. It became the most intense investigation in U.S. history. International cooperation. For the first time, countries across the world shared intelligence at an unprecedented level. Interpol, MI6, Mossad, and dozens of agencies joined the U.S. in tracking Al-Qaeda's network. Pakistan, Germany, and Saudi Arabia handed over key suspects. In Afghanistan, coalition forces began targeting Al-Qaeda camps, searching for bin Laden. The war on terror had begun, but the investigation into 9/11 was only the beginning. By late 2001, America had answers, but not closure. The hijackers were gone, but Tim, their leader, was still free. The evidence pointed to one man hiding in the mountains of Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden. The U.S. would now turn from investigation to retaliation. a hunt that would span 2 decades, cross continents, and redefine national security forever.